Dan, Dan, the webpage for SEPTA sounds very exciting. It says it's planning a bus revolution. Can you tell us what that means?
Sure. So Bus Revolution is SEPTA's first comprehensive redesign of its entire bus network. We've never done anything like it before. We've been running a bus network that stayed, pretty much the same for, since SEPTA was founded. And we're looking at all aspects of bus service, the routes, the stops, the schedules, where they go, how often they go there, and in the hopes of putting together a network that is more effective overall, that gets people further faster, that provides better connections, and is just generally increases ridership and ultimately works better overall for people.
The plans that are online say that SEPTA will be cutting 26 bus lines, and they'll be adding 10 motility on demand routes. Can you tell us which bus lines SEPTA is proposing to cut?
Well, I think so, and I think we're sharing the number. So I mean, we have to own this, but in reality, a lot of the routes that are being eliminated are sort of routes that are out in sort of far out parts of the region. They're low ridership routes. They're routes that run very infrequently. In many cases, they are being replaced by this sort of microtransit or on-demand service that we're proposing to stand up. In terms of some of the routes in the city that we're proposing for elimination, most of the time we are sort of pushing. We're adding, if we're eliminating a route, we're retaining one or two of the segments of the route and we're adding them to something else. So like one of the routes that we're eliminating or proposing to eliminate is the 47M, which is a one-way route that goes up 9th Street. Most of the people use the Route 47, so we would just take the service that's allocated for the Route 47M and push it to the 47, which is the preferred route, which is much higher ridership and much more frequent. We're also proposing to eliminate a route, the 89, which goes through Harrogate and Kensington and those areas. In many cases, we are assigning segments of that route to other routes, or it's already sharing a segment with a different route. So a lot of times it's situations like that. There are fewer routes overall, but in terms of overall access, we don't necessarily view it diminishing.
I appreciate that, but can you list the 26 bus lines you're going to be cutting?
Off the top of my head, we'd have to supply that in writing.
Okay.
I can't name them off the top of my head.
That'd be great. Is there someplace on the webpage where you have a list of which bus lines you're proposing to cut?
There's a lookup table that you could use, but I think it's probably easier for me to just send you a list.
Right. Thank you. I understand that you've been doing a lot of outreach. Could you tell us a little bit about what the response has been like? How many people responded? What it's like?
Sure. So we're doing different types of outreach. So obviously we have a project website, which you referenced, and we have a lot of information on our site, and we've gotten a lot of feedback through the site. We're supplementing, sort of those static things with virtual community conversations, which are generally scheduled for Monday nights. I know you were at the South Philly one.
Yes, which is where I live.
Yeah, no,
for sure. And I do ride two of the buses you're going to eliminate, or you're proposing to eliminate.
What are we eliminating?
The 27 and the 32.
Oh,
I have family in Roxborough and Madison. In
Yeah.
fact, my wife grew up in Roxborough.
Yeah.
So that's
no, I understand. We're rerouting them, not eliminating them.
so that's not exactly true. I looked at that specifically, and the 27 and the 32 that come into South Philadelphia will be eliminated. Well,
the 32. Well, okay. Well, let's talk about the outreach first, then we can talk about this one specifically. Okay, so we're doing virtual community conversations, which are very they're focused geographically. So we did one on South Philly Monday night. We've had I think 4 of those so far, 4 or 5. And then we're having in-person open houses. So these are we go to different community locations. We have posters set up. They're open house style. They're not presentation style. People come, they can talk to the technical team. They can talk to either SEPTA staff or consultant, ask questions, provide input. And then all of the input, whether it's in person or whether it's online, is being aggregated. And we're already reviewing the feedback that we're getting so that we can make adjustments based on that feedback.
So according to your table, you've had most of the responses coming online. I'm looking at a summary of your findings. And you say that 5,806 people have completed the survey online, and only 333 people have participated in person. Do you know the table I'm talking about from your
No,
webpage?
yeah, I think that's referring to an older phase of the project, like a previous phase of the project. That's not where we are now. We haven't put any, we're only about halfway through this round of engagement, so we haven't put anything up on the site yet. We will, but we haven't gotten to that point yet.
So the information on your webpage is old.
It's older, yeah. We've done 2 rounds of public engagement already, Lance. So I'd have to, it's been a while since I looked at that. We can, again, if you want to send a link, I'll tell you exactly when it's from. But the stats that you referenced, they sounds like it was from the first round of engagement that we did, which was in fall of 2021. And, you know, that was, we got a lot of, we did get a lot of survey responses, and then we did pop-up events at transportation centers where we would walk people through a series of questions. And the responses, the survey was kind of the same. We had to make it a little different for the in-person because you only had a couple minutes with people. But, you know, yeah, I think that sounds like what you're referring to. But where we are now in the process, I would say, I think in person, you know, probably talked to about 500 people or so. And then online, we've gotten, you know, probably over 1,000 comments at this point about the proposed network. But we're not doing a survey. We're just letting people provide feedback, you know, through just, you know, they send us an email. It's me on the other end of the email. We collect all the comments. We, you know, like I said, we've started to review them, you know, and they'll obviously play into how we adjust the proposal.
Well, certainly COVID has made it much more difficult to get good information.
Well, I mean, yeah, no, for sure. Like, you know, when we first started planning the engagement last year, we did want to do something that was a little more like what we're doing now, where in person, you know, like kind of, you know, old school like that. But it didn't, I think it was right around like Omicron. So nobody felt comfortable indoors, you know, we were all wearing masks, that kind of thing. And
it's certainly been a challenging environment.
Yeah, no, it's sorry, go ahead.
What percentage of riders are you looking to get a response from before you consider it significant?
That's a really good question. You know, we set a bar at the beginning of the process that was like, you know, about 10,000 people, which is not a ton. And you know, I think we're past it at this point, but you know, I don't think there's like an adequate number. I do think that we've gotten enough feedback, and I think Monday was like a good example of this, where we kind of know how we have to address some of the changes in South Philly based off of that feedback. I do think, you know, the response we got was, you know, I think it makes sense. We know we have to make some adjustments. You know, we're doing as much as we can to get out to riders. You know, we'd love to get up 25,000, 50,000. We set a bar of 10,000 at the beginning of the project, not knowing sort of where COVID would take us. But I think we need to do more.
Right. So statistically, wouldn't there be a number, a percentage of response that would be statistically significant? That's how pollsters work.
Yeah, no, there would be. We didn't set a percentage. We set a number. And we've done 2 different surveys, you know, that has gotten probably around 8,000 or 9,000 responses. So,
and I'm assuming your consultants helped you with all this. So correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, no.
Didn't they explain what number would be a significant statistical number versus just a roundup number?
No, we worked through it, and we worked through it with our own market research firm, with our market research department. And I may be misremembering, but no, we definitely set a bar of talking to 10,000 riders. It wasn't a percentage, you know, but
there's 650,000 bus riders, or there were before COVID. Is that right?
Yes, about half as much now.
Right. So if we went for 1%, right, we would be at 6,500. So 10%. So at 10,000 would be less than 2% of the riders.
No, we need to do better. We know that. And,
right. No, I just want to get the numbers right. Pre-COVID, which is the number we hope to get back to as a society, right? We all hope to get SEPTA up to at least 650,000 riders again. 10,000 would be 1.5% of the riders responding.
Mhm.
So 98.5% would be shut out of the process. Is that correct?
I mean, they wouldn't have responded. That doesn't mean they weren't part of the process, I would say.
Okay. I also noted on the webpage that your consultants were very clear on the problems of the digital divide. I could read you what they wrote, but I'm guessing you already know. So they're saying that whatever survey they do and whatever meetings they hold are going to be significantly skewed by the digital divide. But I couldn't see how they were controlling for that. So I was hoping you could tell us how you control for that.
Well, I think you control for that. I mean, that was why during both phases of outreach thus far, we've done, when we did surveys, we had an in-person survey to go to correspond with the digital survey. It also has driven our, it's why you do face-to-face engagement. It's also why we do focus groups. It's also why we meet with, different community groups, both in person and virtually. So I think it's something that we're cognizant of and trying to control for. But we are meeting with people both online and in person, and making sure that when people request in-person meetings, we do so.
But so far, your responses have skewed very heavily towards online.
Yeah, we've gotten a lot more play online, and I've gotten a lot more feedback online. But when we do community meetings, obviously those are different, and we are aggregating all of that with the other comments too. And we are, when we review the survey responses, we do make sure that we sort of what's the word, like control them for our ridership. So we have a ridership that skews, there's more Black riders than white riders, there's more women riders than men riders. So we try to build that into our survey analysis too.
I noticed that your consultants say that they're providing for SEPTA synopsis of all the information you're collecting. I'm wondering if we can share that. What they write is, we'll also provide detailed written records of public feedback to SEPTA for every meeting we conduct and from every other touch point we have with the stakeholders during engagement activities.
Yeah, I mean, we have.
I'm assuming they're doing that. My
Yes.
question is, can we have access to that information?
I mean, we can share some of it. It would be, I mean, we've had thousands of meetings at this point, so that might be a challenge, but we can talk about how to get you more information.
Well, whatever you get to the board, could we get copies of that?
Oh, yeah, that's easy. Yeah.
Okay, how do we do that, and how can we find it online?
It is not, because the board has gotten, specific presentations, but we can share those lands.
Okay, thank you. At the South Philly meeting, you, I believe, said, not you, forgive me, the consultant said that the plan was to cut back on the number of buses that run up and down Broad Street. I'm old, so it used to be the C bus, now it's the 4 bus.
Yeah.
And it's going to change once again. I forget what number it's going to be. It's going to be a 5 something, right? So we go.
I mean, the numbers are placeholders now. Like we know we have to change some of them because we're gonna change the lettered routes, but we don't know what they'd be called ultimately at the end of the day. So we adopt, for internal purposes, we adopted a placeholder system, and we've just been using that for now.
But right now, the 4 bus runs more often than what the plan for the future calls for. And when she was asked about that, when the consultant was asked about that, she said anybody that doesn't want to wait can use the Broad Street line. And that was very troubling. Our neighborhood and many of our viewers and our riders skew older, and the Broad Street line is not accessible at every stop.
Right.
So I'm wondering how you could consider that an option for riders.
Well, I would say that, whatever we have running on Broad Street, at the end of the day, I think that it's likely to have, I know we talked a lot about this specifically in regards to the 45, but it'll have more peak frequency than the 30 max service it indicates. I think you're right, though, that the Broad Street line isn't an option for everybody. So, it's one of the reasons that we are providing the bus overlay, because we want to, But we will, based off of the feedback that we've gotten, we'll have to make some, we'll have to do some thinking about how to.
Right, so the subway surface cars, the Broad Street line are not as accessible as the buses. And
Correct.
while I understand SEPTA is moving in that direction, forgive me for being so blunt, it may take many years before
Sure.
every stop is accessible.
Yeah, and I think even if every stop was accessible, we would still provide, because they're far apart, so we would still provide bus service on top of
Right.
it too.
So I just want to again put a place mark in that saying we're going to increase, we're recommending increasing the wait time on the Broad Street bus that goes all the way up to North Philly and to Fern Rock. Saying if people don't want to wait, they can ride the Broad Street subway is not an acceptable answer.
Well, it's an option for most people. It's not an option for everybody. But it is, that is why we retain the bus service, and there's bus service on, 2 blocks west, 2 blocks east. So there are lots of options. The options are remaining. They might not run as frequently, but that enables us to provide more frequency on other routes that expand connectivity in different directions. So that's like this is a project like this is zero sum. We're not, unfortunately, getting additional operating budget to just add service. That would be great, but we are looking at ways to sort of increase, people's ability to get to other locations, to increase how far they can get using the transit system. And that requires us to sort of rebalance how we provide that service.
Okay. I'm curious about the home and school meetings. As I'm sure you know, and most of our viewers know, SEPTA is also our school bus system. And there are certainly peaks for when the schools let out. And our magnet school system, Central, Masterman, Bodine, Kappa, Palumbo, all of them and many of the charter schools could not function without the SEPTA school bus system.
Right.
How is that taken into consideration in the plan?
Right. So that's a really good question. So like we collect data on everything. We know how many people use every bus, how many people use every trip. So some of it is built into the work that we've done already. As you've pointed out, though, we are, proposing certain changes which would change some of those school trips. So part of what we have to do is figure out how much service we need to reassign, because we run different types of school service. We run school service that's built into schedules, and then we run school service like trippers that are specific for different schools. So those will remain. We're starting to put that in, and like I said before, we went out with a draft. We've gotten a lot of feedback. We've gotten enough feedback, I think, at this point to know that we have to make some changes, and some of that will just sort of come back in organically because of things that we want to do to make some to address people's concerns. But school service will remain. We're building that back into the proposal now, and we'll be out again publicly next spring, and we'll have all of that built into the plan.
In terms of where you are now, my understanding is this is now almost in the final stage, that you've done a preliminary recommendation, you've made revisions, and now you're making final revisions to bring forth to the SEPTA board for there to be public hearings. Is that correct?
I would say we have a lot of work left to do to get it into the form that we need it to be in. We're not going, so our goal is to start the hearing process next spring. But there will be public engagement before that hearing process. We're not just going to go right to hearing. Our goal is to get the network finished early next year, hopefully January, and then immediately start sharing it, immediately start doing whatever outreach we can do. And then in the probably April, May timeframe, we start hearings. The hearings we'll have an open house so that people can come, engage, and then we'll have the testimony part. But we have a lot of work to do until then, to get things to where we feel comfortable. I would say we're not quite in the final stage, but we're getting ready to enter that final stage.
Is there a threshold number of riders who object to a change for you to make reconsideration of that change?
Um, I don't know if there's a threshold. I think that's an interesting question. I think that riders are, the riders know the system and have pointed out, quite a few issues with what we've presented. I think that there are some changes that are easy to rectify. If it's like a scheduling thing or something like that. Some that are harder because it's part of like a group of changes. So I think that depends on the situation. I know that that's not a great answer, but I think that, we've gotten a lot of feedback from specific areas of the city. We're not surprised that we particularly got a lot of feedback from those areas. And so we need to rework those a bit. There's not a number. I do think it depends on the route. It depends on the scale of the change. It depends on how tied it is to other changes. You know what I'm saying?
I understand it's very difficult, and I
Yeah.
think the difficulty is compounded because you're taking away from my route, and I don't know what's going to replace it. I can't envision it.
Yeah.
All I know is I'm losing something, and it's very hard for me to see what I'm gaining.
No, and that's fair.
So one of
yeah.
the things I'm curious about is, do your consultants ride the buses that they recommend be eliminated to ask the riders on those buses, will the change that the consultants are recommending work?
So our consultants are not from Philadelphia, so they're from out of town, but they've worked on these projects all over the country. The network changes were planned in conjunction with SEPTA staff, many of whom are bus riders.
Sure.
So
But does anyone actually get on the bus? Like, does anyone ride the 45, which is the old 23? Does anyone get who says it doesn't have to run as often as it's running
Yeah,
now? Does anyone get on the bus and actually ask the riders what they think of that idea?
I mean, we do a lot of survey work. We don't ask people on the buses that, but that's a good idea. Maybe we should do that. But no,
I know we're running out of time, so I would like to give you a chance just to talk. But if you could answer one more question.
Sure.
Could you tell people how they can make sure their voice is heard if they have concerns? Or if they like the ideas that you're proposing, how they can make sure you hear that as well? Because often it's easier to be against something than it is to be for something new.
No, and that's true. And thank you for asking that and giving me the opportunity. So the best thing for people to do, I mean, ideally they can come to either a virtual event or an open house. However, they don't need to. People have busy schedules. We don't, they don't need to do that. If they want to provide any input whatsoever, it's busnetwork@septa.org.
So we're going to run that at the bottom of our screen tonight.
That would be beautiful. Thank you.
Larry's our project manager. Larry, if you can make sure that works, that'd be great. And with SEPTA's permission, we'd also like in our next weekly email to include this information so that people know how they can be heard, know about the meeting at 1234 Market or wherever it is.
Yeah.
Is that something that you can approve?
Absolutely. That's great. Thank you. And that's the best way. I am on the other side of the email address. I make sure everything is binned appropriately. We are starting to review the comments, but people have plenty of time to provide feedback. So, we are not, there's no suggestions that are not being, sort of consolidated and aggregated and reviewed. Every comment we get will be aggregated. We will be providing a summary of those comments at some point over the next month. I don't know exactly when, but we have started to kind of put that into shape so that people know generally what the response has been, positive or negative, big or small. It's busnetwork@septa.org.
I really appreciate your time. I'm going to now say, is there anything that you were hoping to get across that I missed?
No. I mean, I want to be very clear with people that, this is a process that is iterative. We're really interested in what people have to say. There's things in the new network that we know are really different than in the proposed network, the draft, that are different from the current than the way we run things now. We do feel like we have to make some changes in the way we run our buses. But what we're open to suggestions. And, you know, we're happy to talk to people further if they're so inclined. But no, I appreciate the time today, Lance.
Well, thank you very much for joining us on Hall Monitor, and thank you to our viewers for joining us this evening. Dan, appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Lance. Have a good day.